We are back with the Falcons Audible presented by AT&T. DJ Shockley over there, Dave Archer right there. I'm Derek Rackley right here. We've got all things Falcons. We're going to talk about the previous matchup against the Seattle Seahawks. Unfortunately, Falcons come up short 34-14 in a game, guys, that was, I don't know how you want to characterize it, clunky. To me, coming into this one, I don't know why I had this feeling, but I felt like it was a trap game in the sense that Atlanta had gotten 3 straight wins, feeling really good about themselves, facing a Seattle Seahawks team that had lost 3 straight games, traveling across the country. Like, everything kind of stacks up like, oh, Atlanta should win the game. And you guys know what happens in the National Football League. Whenever that happens, usually it's the opposite effect, right? Now, you could just make the argument from a X's and O's standpoint that Atlanta just didn't do what they needed to do to win the game, right? They just didn't come out sharp. They didn't focus. They didn't execute. DJ, if you could summarize the performance of what went wrong for Atlanta, how would you summarize it?
That's a good question, man, because I think you can point to a number of different things throughout this ball game that says, okay, if you do this, then obviously you play better. I think obviously you start the ball game. I think from the flow of the beginning of the ball game where we sing the national anthem and they don't get the flag out. I mean, when we started there, it's okay. Maybe that's not where we want to start.
So pregame wasn't even stacking up right.
Pregame, we wasn't in a good flow. But I think, obviously, you think about the penalties that hurt you early in the ballgame. It's something we've talked about for the last few ball games is these pre-snap penalties that hurt you and that affect your drive. Obviously, giving up explosive plays on the defensive side of the ball is not good. It's something that we've been a pretty good job of keeping everything in front of you, but they had a bunch of guys just running wide open. Yeah. And obviously, DK Metcalf went into 50-50 balls. They throw up a flea flicker on the outside, and, AJ's in great position, and DK makes an unbelievable catch. But I think offensively, the more you can hand the football to number 7, the better you're going to be. And I think the 2 touchdown drives we had, they all started with Bijan Robinson with the ball in his hands, running the football, going down here. I thought he probably played the most complete game as a back when you talk about some of the things he was able to do. Making guys miss. There probably should have been 3 plays where they had negative yardage plays that he turned them to 6-7-yard gains.
Houdini.
Obviously Kirk missed a couple passes. He'll be the first one to tell you. Obviously the big throw to Ray. Misses the shot across first, throws it over the head of Mooney. Then Ray was on a corner route, got him open, maybe possibly scores if he catches this football. He overthrows it. Just little small things here and there on both sides of the ball. You say, man, very uncharacteristic of what we've seen, what this team has done over the past, 5-6 weeks. And it just never really came together, and you were kind of stuck in neutral for a long time.
Yeah, Arch, I mean, this is one where, again, DJ brought up the penalties, 9 penalties for Atlanta, 5 for Seattle. But is there any other league, and this is kind of a hard question to answer, but basically the point that I'm trying to make is in the National Football League, when you lose the turnover margin 3-0, the chances of winning the game are minute. I don't know what the number is, right? Yeah. But we're talking single-digit percentages, right? I mean, you've got to be elite of the elite of the elite in order to overcome that, right? So to me, when I look at this, it's penalties and turnovers really kind of negated any ability to get in a rhythm or momentum. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's easily fair to say. I think that the word that comes to mind for me was dysfunctional.
Yeah.
There was too many lack of attention to details. I mean, you got them off the field on 3rd down 2 times and got penalties that extended drives. I mean, how much did that equate to, 1, your less time with the football and an opportunity to potentially come back, and 2, to extend their drives to potentially put points on the board. Attention to detail, like the DK Metcalf touchdown, where you're supposed to be. Justin Simmons gets too wide in cover 2, and I think we're going to jump into this, but AJ's expecting inside help, and Justin's is too wide, and so just the attention to detail where he is on the field, no reason to get out there. Now, DK Metcalf makes a really nice move at the top of the route, maybe gives you a little nod, think he's going to the corner. But again, understanding just attention to detail, I've got a guy out there in A.J. Terrell that's bailing because he's got no responsibility flat-wise. He's bailing. He's going to take that away.
Right.
I don't need to lean outside. I can hug the inside to take that throw away. Just little attention to detail, things like that. Hand placement, which ends up being a hands to the face. Why are the hands not where they're supposed to be? And also kind of felt like the building was a little bit
flat,
bare,
dry,
and flat.
Yes.
And I don't want to, I don't want to get on the fans or anything like that. But there wasn't a lot of energy, and we have to bring the energy. Kirk said that, but we need to create some plays to give the energy maybe to the crowd to a certain extent. But you're actually looking for a little bit of a boost there. But it looked like everybody on the team, and we've all been on teams where you're kind of looking around. Are you going to make a play? Are you going to make a play? And so nobody kind of stepped up. I'm going to make a play.
Correct.
And it just kind of, as you said, and Ross said, Raheem, flat.
Yeah. And guys, a lot of things too, as far as winning games. I think about the previous three. Like, you have to have the ability to kind of stack plays positively, right? It's because, like, you can either do, well, you could really do three things. You could stack them positively, you could stack them negatively, or it could just kind of be like this, right? But I feel like the last 3 weeks, Atlanta has been able to stack positive plays. And that's not just explosive offense, right? It's offensive plays, and then it's a defensive stop, and then it's a special teams play, and then it's an offensive series, right? The last 3 weeks, we've been able to stack offensive and team plays. And in this game, we just weren't able to stack anything together. We weren't able to get any kind of momentum that would help us get out of the funk that you talked about and help get this crowd going a little bit. So let's take a step back, guys, and think about this big picture, because you win 3 straight games, and then you lose a game that really wasn't that competitive, to be quite honest, and everybody starts to push the panic button. And we obviously will get into Tampa a little bit more, but we know what happened to them last night. And DJ, is this time to push the panic button, or is this just a bump in the road and it's time to reset a little bit?
I think it's a bump in the road. And as we talked about, you're going to have games like this through a season. I don't think anybody goes through a season and says, we played all 17 games perfect. We played them exactly how we wanted to. There's going to be things that happen, and you get in some lulls. But the biggest thing that good teams do is they don't allow that to permeate through the next week. And I think this is a team that we've seen already this year that can play really good football, that can do it consistently, but I think we've heard it from the head coach that he won't allow that to happen. We got a staff here that's been there, done it. I don't know how many years of experience they have on it, but you got a lot of guys in this league who have been in this league and understand what it takes to go win ball games, and I think they'll do that. And the one thing you like about when you go back and probably watch the tape, you say, you know what, it wasn't like they just outplayed us. It wasn't like they had guys who one-on-one just beat us. It was mistakes you made that are very correctable. So you turn on the table and say, you know what, if my foot placement's here in a little bit better spot right here, maybe I don't get beat around the corner. That's something, walking to the next game, you don't let that happen again. You don't turn that first mistake into a second or third mistake, and you continue to do it. This is a team I think will absolutely, learn from what happened this past week and move on. And now the mindset is, hey, we're back in a division game where we know how much it means. And nobody's going to feel sorry for Tampa. If it was us, I don't think Tampa would have felt sorry either. And we'll get into some of the things that's going on there. But I still feel like because of the way this team is made, the type of leaders that you have on this team, and who your head coach is, this will not happen again into another week. I heard him talk after the game to you, and Arch, and he basically said, that's on me to make sure this doesn't happen. We can't make excuses for not being prepared and ready to go. And he said, I guarantee you it won't happen again.
Yeah, see, and I think that's the key part about it, what Shock's talking about, is are there things that you did that were uncharacteristic, and I'll give a couple examples from attention to detail, that you can take care of, or was the other team that much better that they forced you into those situations? And I think it's the former. I don't think that Seattle did anything necessarily to Atlanta to create this kind of flat game. It was all on the team. So you go back, Drake London runs an in cut, and he elevates for a ball that's probably about 6 or 8 inches above his head that he's caught 100 times and probably could catch it with his eyes closed. But the attention to detail to squeeze it instead of rotating his head and looking where coverage was, make the catch first, come down. Ball goes through his hands, picked off. I talked a little bit about the Justin Simmons thing, understanding – that's something he knows he's supposed to do. He's supposed to be inside, and AJ's got the outside. Those are things that the team can correct themselves, and it has nothing to do with what Seattle did. And I'm not trying to take anything away from DK Metcalf and these guys, and Kenneth Walker, who made a really nice run for a touchdown. There were some things Seattle did, certainly, to create their opportunity to win the game. But there were all things that if you just take care of your business, This game is another game that comes into the fourth quarter. You got a chance to win. And so I think you hang your hat on that and you go back to the 3 previous games that you did get it done. And this is one, like you were talking about, you flush it out of your system.
And there was one, Arch giving examples, one that popped in my mind when I was thinking about his ball game, and Arch was going through some different scenarios in our run defense. And I thought the big thing was there were a couple times where we had a couple misfits. And you're talking about a guy just, hey, he's supposed to be in the A gap, and he ends up, getting pushed out to the B gap, and then here comes a gashing run. I thought that happened a couple times in the ball game as well. Little details of, okay, I didn't feel the right gap, or I wasn't physical enough at that point of attack to hold my ground and not lose that spot. So there are, I think, a few things you could point to, but when you look at the film, it's not like, oh, that guy is better than my guy. It was something I did that didn't allow me to win that particular battle in that situation.
Do you believe in the whole slap in the face scenario? You kind of got fat. You talked about that maybe initially, about you won 3. And is this the kind of whack you back into reality? Do you believe in that?
Yeah, and guys, I was kind of talking about this last week on the podcast. I talked about it on the pregame show about how it's easy in broadcasting when you're talking about the team to start talking about the next 3 or 4 weeks, the next 4 or 5 weeks. But you guys all know that in this league, if you're not focused on this week, today, okay, you're going to get beat. And that's how it works, right? And to your point, sometimes you need to get slapped in the face a little bit, and sometimes I think we would all agree that we were parts of these games when we played. Games that we went in, had all the momentum, feeling great, should have won the game, probably a better team, and for whatever reason, you lose. And you look back at it and you're just like, how in the heck did we lose that game? Right? Because you get finite opportunities in the National Football League. It's not the NBA. It's not Major League Baseball. You get 17 chances in the regular season. You got to make everyone count. And you're right. This has got to be one of those, like, back to reality. We got to go grind it. We got to fix all the things that you guys talked about because, to your point, here's just a couple numbers to back it up. Geno Smith had been averaging about 42, 43 passing attempts a game. He had 28 in this one, right? So it wasn't like he just lit up the defense. And rushing game has not, defensively that we're talking about, has not been great this year. They ran for 103 yards, right? Not great, but a good performance. Like, you can win with that. If they rushed for 175, you're like, we got problems. So, to your guys' point, everything is correctable, and it's what type of work is put in these next few days to get ready to play a Tampa team this weekend. So let's kind of turn the page, because we could sit here and talk about all the things that went wrong in a game, but I think we kind of highlighted all the bad parts that contributed to the loss against Seattle. So let's move into Tampa Bay. And knowing before last night this was going to be a grind, because it always is when we play Tampa. You go down to Tampa, it's going to be a difficult challenge. But guys, we have to talk about the elephant in the room, is that last night Tampa Bay likely lost 2 of their great players. Godwin's likely going to be out. As if we are recording this show on Tuesday morning, it looks like a dislocated ankle that's likely going to require surgery. Again, don't know any other details beyond that. Mike Evans went into the game with a hamstring injury. He played. He went down in that game as well, and it did not look good. Again, don't want to speculate on what's going to happen there, but you guys can't tell me that this is the same team if those 2 players, Arch, do not play in the game this weekend.
Absolutely not. Those are 2 guys, and Godwin in particular, you go to his numbers against the Falcons, he's had really good games against Atlanta, and prayers go out to Chris Godwin. He's one of the really good players in this league. He's one of their more active players in their community down there, too. He's been doing a lot of work with their hurricane relief and stuff down there. So, Chris, get back quick. Hopefully you're back on the field. But this is a battle of attrition, the National Football League, and guys are going to go down. It just so happens they lost probably a Hall of Fame wide receiver in Mike Evans, and you speculate, and I don't know where he is on the hamstring. It didn't look good, as you said. And there's no question Godwin's out of this game. So now they've got a young core of receivers that are going to have to step up. They got the rookie from Washington, McMillan, who looks like a pretty good player. They've got Palmer. Is it Palmer, the other receiver that's really the quick receiver?
Shepard,
So they're and then Derek Shepard, who's the veteran, who was a second-round draft pick for the Giants a few years ago, who came over in free agency. So they're going to have to lean on those guys. And who knows? Maybe they do something. Maybe they do something, with a trade scenario. There's some guys that are available there. I do know that they've got good players in the backfield. They've got 3 running backs that can tote the rock, and that's become more a prominent thing that they want to do is run the football. And they've got 3 guys that can run. And Cade Otton, he stepped up last night. He didn't, I think he had almost 100 yards receiving. Yep. It's a tight end that's coming on. So they're going to have weapons, albeit inexperienced weapons. So don't go down there thinking just because Evans and Godwin might not play that this is going to be a walk in the park.
That right there, DJ, is the biggest point you got to make about this because of what we just talked about. You cannot go into this game, again, don't know exactly what the status is going to be with Evans, but you can't go into the game saying, oh, these 2 guys are not going to play. We good.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because they got pros and they got Baker Mayfield, and that dude knows how to make plays.
Yeah.
Okay, whether he's running the ball or he's slinging it downfield, we know that Rachaad White can catch the ball out of the backfield, and they're just going to pivot. Like Liam Cohen is a smart offensive coordinator, and they're going to find ways, whether it's to go to Cade Otton more, whether it's to go to the running backs out of the backfield, whether it's to make the running game more of a priority, but they're not going to lay over and just and die because they don't have these 2 guys in the game. So Atlanta has still got to go prepare to execute and slow down and stop anything that's thrown their direction.
And what fans have to realize is, you lose 2 high caliber receivers in Evans and Godwin, but the guys are playing in the National Football League. I think they're pretty good too.
For a reason.
It's a reason why they're playing in the National Football League. And guess what? It's the old cliche that we've all heard every single time is when one guy goes down, it's another guy's opportunity.
Yep.
So you don't think a Sterling Shepard or Palmer or Arden, all those guys are like, you know what? Here's a chance for me to catch more balls.
I got this.
Here's a chance for me to go make more plays. Here's a chance to show Liam Cohen and his, Todd Bowles that, you know what? I know we lost 2 of our guys, but you can lean on me. Mm-hmm. So you're going to have other guys coming into this ball game with an extra motivation of, you know what? I'm here for a reason. Maybe this is my opportunity to shine. So you can't go into this ball game thinking just because they don't have those 2 guys that those other guys are not going to try to shine as well. And I think the other thing that's really important that Arch just mentioned was the back situation. Mm-hmm. You can't allow them to come in and think, okay, they're not going to throw it around. They're not going to try to run the football. Now, if you come in here and allow them to run the football for, 150 yards and all these backs get going, it don't matter if you got Mike Evans or Chris Godwin. Guess what? Their offense is going to be moving. And we all know Baker the way we do. We know he's a freaking competitor. He won't care nothing about, hey, because I don't have my 2 guys, I'm not going to go out here and try to compete. This is still going to be a team that's going to draw some things up. And lucky enough, they've already played Atlanta one time, so they know exactly what they're getting themselves into.
Well, and they're going into their building yesterday or today, now that they lost that game last night, and tomorrow as they get ready to go into their full game plan part of the week. And they're looking at it very similar to the way Atlanta is. They went into the game last night. They lost the football game. Now, they could have been the 1 game up in the division. But as it turns out, they're in the same position.
Yeah.
You're playing for first place again this week. So they can potentially go in and do a very similar thing that we're talking about is, hey, this was a slap in the face. Yeah, we lost some players, and they've got a little bit other things to deal with. But we're still in the same position we were before. We're playing for the division lead. We win this game on Sunday, we lead the division. So let's correct the stuff we screwed up on, just like we're talking about with the Falcons, and let's go win us a game in our own building.
And I think what's important to note here too, guys, is they still got some pretty good defensive players. I mean, we just talked about the offensive side of the ball. I don't believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Arch, but Antoine Whitfield did not play in the last game.
No, he did
He's
not.
back.
Yeah, right.
And he ended up having 10 tackles and a sack last night. I mean, he's one of the premier defensive backs in the National Football League when he's healthy. They still have Levante David. They still have guys that can get after the passer. I think here, fellas, not to say this is trap game again, but the trap you fall into is if the offense comes out flat again and you end up playing into the favor of Tampa Bay and keeping this a low-scoring game, that could be where you end up getting tripped up, is if you don't come out and execute on offense and then you allow Tampa without having their stars on offense to hang around in the fourth quarter, and this is a 16-13 game, then Baker's going to find somebody to make a play. Yeah. So what's important? Starting fast, taking advantage of your drives, punching the ball in the red zone, and scoring. Like, you got to put points on the board in this game to make it difficult for them to play catch-up. Easier said than done, but this is not, it's not just an offensive game, but I feel like this is one where the offense has to come out, DJ, and execute and put points on the board so you don't let them linger around in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And you got to think about how Tampa has started their last 4 games, going down and scoring on their opening drive. You're talking about starting fast. See, that happens in your own building. You got to be able to respond. And I think for the Falcons offensively, you have to have that kind of attitude and mentality of we have to play a lot better than we did last week. and 14 points probably not going to win this ball game. So you got to go in with the mindset of we got to be able to run the football like we've wanted to do the last few games, but also you got to continue to keep everybody involved. We've seen Drake is probably the first one who's been out here catching jugs after letting the ball go through his hand. Mooney probably the same thing. I mean, all these guys are professionals at this ball game and understand what it takes to be elite at the National Football League. But going on the road, like Archer's mentioned, playing in Tampa where everything is on the line, why not put your best foot forward? So offensively, you have to be able to go do that.
Well, and let's be real in the fact that, okay, you played this team just a couple weekends ago or on a Thursday night, so a couple weeks ago, and it took a record-setting performance by your quarterback to win the football game for 509 yards at home, and you had to do it in dramatic fashion just to get yourself to overtime to get it. So again, there's a couple players out, looks like, for Tampa, maybe a player or two on the defensive side of the football, but as you guys have talked about, this is a National Football League, and there's only 53 guys on the roster, and they made the roster for the reason that's going to happen this weekend as they're supposed to play.
The other thing I wanted to point out is in their last 3 games, they've won 1 and they've lost twice, all right? But I want you to just read that number that's sitting right there, DJ. What does that say?
37.3.
37.3. Do you know what that is? That's their points per game offensively in the last 3 games. Now, they've only won 1 game. They pounded the Saints, okay? But even though they might be down a couple – here's what I do know. Mike Evans and Godwin did not score all these points.
No.
Okay? So that's what I'm saying is that this is a complete team that, again, if Atlanta is not prepared to go out and execute against this team, maybe they don't score 37, but maybe they score 26, right? So just because they're down a couple players, you guys summed it up great. This is still the National Football League, and they got players on their team that can win. So let's kind of do some quick keys here. I know it's early in the week, DJ and Arch. So if you think about what does Atlanta have to do to go down to Tampa and come away with a victory, let's start with 1 or 2 keys to victory for you for Atlanta this weekend.
I said it earlier. I think number 7 has touched the ball 20 times. And he is one of those kind of guys that the more the ball's in his hand, the more good things are probably going to happen for your offense. And we've seen it in the run game. We've seen it in the pass game. Bijan Robinson has to be a huge part of it. Now, some games dictate where Tyler Algier, he's downhill, he's pounding. I can understand that. But then 7 is a different breed. And I think he's shown the ability to be able to be an impact player every time he touches the football. So if we find a ways to, get it to him, 8, 9 times out of the backfield, another time run it for 17, 18, that's great. We need the more touches we can get number 7 in football, the better off his offense will be and more stress he puts on the defense.
And guys, I'm gonna ask this question. I'm kind of like putting you guys on the spot here because you mentioned Bijan, and I'm the same way. I watch him and I'm like, I don't know how he makes people miss the way that he does. So I'm going to ask you guys a question. When's the last running back that is somewhat built like Bijan that you feel like has the shake in the excitement level that he does? Is there somebody that comes to mind?
Well, I mean, you start talking about people like Barry Sanders.
That's the name that came to my mind, but I was like, there's got to be somebody since him, right? Like,
no,
because like McCaffrey's not like that.
Barkley has a little bit of shake to him. He's a little bit thicker-bodied guy, but they have a similar ability to make people miss in a phone booth to a certain extent, and then they have the acceleration to run away. I would say that he's the guy that's currently playing, that they're very similar to one another. I think that Bijan has a little bit more shake in him, but I wouldn't, and they both run with power.
Yeah.
That would be the guy that comes to mind for me. As far as an Atlanta Falcon goes, it used to make people miss. I mean, you got to go back to like Warwick Dunn, somebody like
Warwick
that.
Never took a hit,
Yeah, and Warwick, that's exactly right. He never got hit head on, and he would make people. But I don't remember him doing these violent jump cuts and all this kind of stuff. And especially if you go back and look at the tape, I know you guys did, he's not just doing it like out in the perimeter where a guy comes up and boom, he goes inside and actually starts his run, and then all of a sudden he jumps away from a DB coming from the third level or a linebacker who's free, and the guy completely whiffs.
Yeah, I mean, he'll basically do this in the tackle box.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Yeah. I had a chance to talk to him for the coaches show this week, and he talks about how, Coach Petrie gets them out there and they have certain drills where they're constantly, I got to do this drill again, but he's throwing bags at him and he's got to dodge the bags and he'll come at him with 2 guys that are supposedly like linebackers and there are certain moves he's making. But make no mistake. I mean, just like you said, Rack, we come up with like 3 guys that could
Seriously.
So there's an innate God-given ability that he's got. And man, it's fun to watch.
It really is. And so I didn't mean to like completely pivot the conversation, but I've had that come through my mind on numerous occasions. I'm like, when is the last time we've seen a guy that's built like him, that has the footwork and the escapability, the contact balance, everything that you talk about? That and one of the names that came to my mind was Barry Sanders, and I was like,
wow.
We got to go back that far.
Yeah, if you haven't seen Barry Sanders, you probably heard of him. Put that tape on. You're talking about.
You're gonna be stuck watching that. That's what you're gonna be.
Let me ask you guys this. Okay, you don't want to head fake yourself here, but Tampa's going into the tape room, and they're going to look and say, okay, Bijan did this against us because he made some plays against them, and then he did what he just did this weekend. What is Tampa get? Take me into Tampa's defensive meeting rooms, and maybe even the Falcon offensive meeting rooms. And I say head fake. Yeah, you want to use him, got to get him the rock, but how much do you use him to potentially deke the defense too?
Yeah, I mean it's a great point because. Like I've talked about it in weeks past, that I actually like packages where you get both the backs on the field at the same time. And you start Bijan out in the slot and you have Tyler in the backfield and you motion him and you either give him the ball, you put 2 backs in the backfield, you fake the ball to him because he's going to draw eyes. Like he's going to get people's attention whether he gets the football or not. And so that's the quandary I think that you put your offensive play caller in is, okay, he's electric with the ball in his hands. We got to get him the ball. Right. Like I'm sure they have those same discussions over there. We got to – it's not like we're charting how many, but like we're a better team when he gets more touches than when he doesn't.
Yeah.
But we've got a lot of options too when we show that we're going to give him the ball and we don't do it, right? So that's kind of the gift and the curse as a play caller, right, Arch? Is that when you have so many different playmakers – how do you get the ball to them, and then how do you use them to decoy the defense? And from a game planning perspective, at Tampa Bay's probably thinking, all right, we got to make sure that Bijan doesn't end up taking over this game because he's got the ability to do it. So do they, Arch, Shock, do they end up saying, maybe we commit one extra player to the box? Maybe we end up bringing the strong safety down a little bit more.
Well, they're already going to do that.
Yeah, I say you do that.
Bowles' defense has got 8 guys around the line of scrimmage all the time.
Bowles is the most aggressive play caller we know, especially on that defensive side. But you talk about that part. Oh, yeah, you can add another guy to the box, and then guess what? This dude who you played last week with number 5 had 154 on you. Yeah. Mooney had another 105.
Well, and that's why you had the numbers you had last time, because they were around the line of scrimmage. Yeah, so maybe the defense doesn't change from what we saw before, but where's the dividing line, Shock, on how much you use him as a decoy, like Rack's talking about, and how much you say, you know what, I got to give him the ball because what he can do.
I think it's probably like 60-40, 60% of usage, and the other time you have to be able to, his presence has to create things. Mm-hmm. And I think we've seen enough times with the different motions that the Falcons use and that, Zach Robinson used where, he's running around, he comes behind the quarterback, and all you need is that linebacker to step out just a little bit because he thinks Bijan's coming in. Oh, here comes Drake on the inside slant. Like, you can use him in ways that he is still effective. And it's almost like, okay, if we eat off him being a decoy, it's almost as good as giving him the football because you're still winning. Yep. You know what I mean? So I think the usage rate that you're talking about, Arch, you got to get your guy football. Obviously, he's one of your main guys, but he can be used in so many ways that still helps your offense kind of not really by using him. So you use him, but also – let him create for you as well.
Well, and they know they're not defending the run very well.
Yeah.
And so they already were committing people line of scrimmage. You go back and look at the tape against the Falcons, there's 8 men in the box the entire game almost.
Yeah.
They're a single high safety team, which lends itself to throwing the ball all over the yard, which is what we did.
Right.
So you kind of it'll be interesting to see what is Zach Robinson working from a position of strength because of what he did to him last time, or is he kind of reeling because of what happened this weekend?
Right.
And so it'll be interesting to see what goes on, and I think they'll come with a good plan. But there's a lot of things to consider both for the Falcon offense and for Tampa's defense.
Exactly.
And the other part about it is they may be without their nickel guy, Tyke Smith, who is played really big for him, rookie from the Dogs.
By the way.
Yeah, by the way, just I didn't know anybody
Throw that in there.
I didn't know
Everybody do that.
But he had a punch out in the game last time against Atlanta. He's had a bunch of them, and he
played good in that game last time too.
All right, Arch, I didn't want to completely forget the fact that you have not given a key or two. So before we close this up,
Arch, I got 10 keys.
We've already got.
Give us a key or two for the game.
Is this a good one? Is this a yeah, we're all over the map here. Or I am. You guys are dialed in. I'm going to go to the other side of the ball. Shock talked about our run game and what we're doing and making sure we use guys and stuff like that. I'm going to talk about their run game because I think with some of the injuries that they're going to have, there's going to be an idea that we're going to lean on the run game a little bit, and Atlanta has been susceptible to a certain extent. Now, you mentioned the numbers are better this week.
Yep.
103 yards. And I think if you go back and look at the tape, about 30 of that came in the first quarter.
Mm-hmm.
So all of a sudden, that even pares down more. Walker had, I think, right at 70 yards, 69 yards rushing. He had a 20-yard touchdown run in the second quarter, and he had, I think, 22 of his 69 yards in the first quarter. So he had like 44 of his 69 yards on like 4 or 5 plays.
Yeah.
And that's kind of been the MO of the defense. If you've been pretty good against the run, but you've given up some plays here and there that make the number look screwy. I think they're going to lean on the run game. I think they're going to get all 3 guys involved, and that extends to their screen game. We saw it last night. They scored on the screen a couple of times, or at least got big play in screens. So screen game and run game for the defense, corral that. Make Baker make some plays with these young receivers.
I like it. All right, round 2 of Falcons Buccaneers will happen this weekend down in Tampa. That'll be 1 p.m. on Fox. We gotta look to see if Atlanta can rebound. We talked about it earlier. Did they get a little slap in the face, and did they get back on the right track? Because that's what has to happen when you go on the road and play in the National Football League. Big opportunity this weekend. And as you know, we didn't talk any about what's going to happen about after this weekend because the only thing that matters is this Sunday. Falcons at Tampa Bay. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Falcons Audible, presented by AT&T. On behalf of Shock and Arch, I'm Rack. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next week, everybody.